Okay, so let's look at what you annotated in my mother's garden. Okay, the first thing I want to talk about is, what did you think about the narrator? Now, we're looking at characterization, and so when we look at characterization, we're looking at personality traits. So what can we say about the narrator? Why did you say that? I mean, I could definitely see that she's disappointed in her life. Why do you think that that is different from Amy Tan's disappointment? That is an excellent assessment. Excellent. That's a stamp-worthy assessment. Amy Tan was embarrassed by her family, and so she was filled with embarrassment throughout the dinner, and so the tone itself was different. And this one, the narrator is so full of rage, like as a reader, I became enraged, okay? And it comes across, doesn't it? In Amy Tan, I kind of chuckled a little bit and kind of rolled my eyes. I could see why she was embarrassed, but to me, it wasn't like over the top. This one was like, how dare they treat this person this way? And it comes across definitely different there. So that is an excellent answer. And you changed my mind, because at first, I was thinking some similarities there, because both of them were kind of embarrassed with their circumstances. But I think your explanation of it being more rage is better than the embarrassment. So good job there. That's very good. You definitely proved that opinion. Hardworking and persistent, on the surface, it's definitely more mom. But when you look at it, the narrator worked really hard to fit in, and worked really hard to be in that school. It was a scholarship, okay? And so for that narrator to be there on scholarship, the hardworking and persistent had to be there. And good job at catching that minor detail that a lot of people overlook. So that was good. Okay, that's definitely stamp-worthy too. All right, anyone else? The reason why it's so important that we analyze this story in such minute detail is this is your test for the whole narrative unit. You're going to take this story and you're going to rewrite it from the mother's point of view. Okay? So we have to make sure that we get all the little details figured out and analyzed, and that you have a good understanding of it before we start that. All right, so the task here is to understand what irony is. And then we're going to go through and we're going to find some examples of irony to make sure that you truly understand before we have to write about it. So irony. Nothing is written in stone. Raise your hand. Who can tell me why that is irony? Excellent. It is written in stone, which tells you that the definition of irony is a contradiction. Okay? Very good. All right, I'm going to give you a minute to write down and fill in the blank. Just like you guessed, irony is a contradiction. So irony, as we talked about, is a contradiction. It's the use of words to express the opposite of what one really means. And this is why irony is so hard to understand. In the first paragraph, objectivity was in quotation marks. Okay, so we knew that one. But when we look at words, it's almost like you have to truly understand the story really well to get the irony. Because it is not one of those easy things to get. It comes out as sarcasm. When we're talking, you understand sarcasm because the tone of voice changes, right? Let's say, for example, that, going back to my previous example, I absolutely love it when my kids get hit. You can tell, right, that I'm being sarcastic, okay? The tone of voice changed. My tone of voice changed, okay? The expression on my face. And even what I said is kind of like, right. And so that's ironic, because it comes out as sarcasm. The problem is, that when we're reading, finding that irony can be difficult, especially since there are different types of irony.
So basically how your face looks.
So how can you tell if someone's being ironic? Sarcasm, which we just talked about. And it's also, if you have a tragic or unexpected event, and they're talking about it like it's a good thing, they're being ironic. Okay? They don't mean that literally. It's the use of words to convey something other than, and especially the opposite. And this is the key part right here. It's to make light or of something. So what happens is, especially on these TV shows like Saturday Night Live and all these talk shows, they are not really laughing about Hurricane Ida. And they're not really making fun of these people. They are being sarcastic to mock them. Okay? They are trying to point out to you, hey guys, this is ridiculous. Can you believe this happened? And unless you understand irony, a lot of people go, oh my gosh, really? They said that? And that's why irony is the most used literary element. It's the most tested literary element, and it's the hardest one to get. Okay? It's very difficult to tell in literature when you're right. It's very difficult. Okay? And then there's the situational, which we just talked about. And this is a contradiction to what you expect to happen and what actually occurs. Okay, so that is action-based. It's not going to be sarcasm because sarcasm is words. This is an action-based. So you would expect this person to do something, but the opposite happens. So here's some examples that you can kind of see. Okay. The sign says always open. Okay. But then there's a sign that says closed.
I've seen this image.
So that is ironic. Okay. I just had to do this one just because it was me. We are committed to excellence. Who can figure out why that's ironic?
There's 2 L's.
Okay, excellence implies that they work on being the best at something, right?
Yeah.
And they misspelled excellence. So definitely irony there. Life is ironic. It takes sadness to know what happiness is, noise to appreciate silence, and someone's absent to value their presence. How is that ironic? Because remember, irony is the opposite. So it takes the opposite of something to appreciate it. So the opposite of noise is silence. And so if you have all of this noise and you're just like, I have this headache, it's got to stop. It takes silence to appreciate. Okay?
Yeah.
All right, the functions of irony. I'll give you a second to copy this down. All right, so this is why irony is so important. Okay. Notice it says in much of literature. I can honestly not think of a single piece of literature that does not have irony. Okay. And the reason is because it highlights the theme. That's how the author's going to show it. It's the easiest way is to use irony. Okay. With verbal irony, okay, you can see the character's personality. And we've talked about characteristics, okay, that it's the personality. And irony really sets that out, okay, because you can come out and just say it, okay, and you can say it sarcastically, and you can see this character. The verbal irony is going to be in dialogue. So when you are writing, and we're going to go over before we write the rubric, when you're writing in dialogue, verbal irony is a very good thing to use, and it will bump up your score a lot. Okay, but we're going to work on irony, so don't expect to say, "Oh my gosh, I can't do it yet." We'll work on it.
Is it verbal or irony like
Situational. They like situational because it emphasizes that life can be unpredictable. And think of how many stories that happens in, and irony is a great way to do that. It also shows how things can change quickly. And since a lot of authors like to do that in their stories, irony is a good way to do that. And that's one of the reasons why irony is used so often, because that is the whole purpose of irony in a story. I put the examples on your paper so that you can always refer to them. They believe you when you lie or joke, but you have to convince them while talking fact-random quotes. So when you tell the truth, people are like, I don't believe you. But if you lie, they believe you. And it's ironic that that happens. And it happens all the time. Shakespeare's just one that says it in King Lear. I must be overtired, Buttercup managed, the excitement and all. Rest then, her mother cautioned. Terrible things can happen when you're overtired. I was overtired the night your father proposed. How is that ironic? Think about that one. So, because she's talking to her daughter, and she says terrible things can happen when you're overtired, I was overtired the night your father proposed, it's ironic. He was one of the most supremely stupid men I've ever met. He taught me a great deal. How is that ironic? Definitely. You're saying he's stupid, but he taught you all of this, and someone who teaches you something is intelligent. So it's definitely ironic. Do you see why it's difficult to find that irony?
Yeah.
You have to think about it when you're reading. And if you're not thinking about what you're reading and actually looking for it, it does make it very difficult. Oh, and here's my objectivity thing we talked about. All right, so we're going to practice. Okay, this is as far as we got today, so we will pick up here tomorrow.